The most common trait that U.S. farmers were going for with soybeans was increased yield. And that's why they switched to GM soy. GM soy lowers yield by 4 to 11%. Some say 5 to 10%. In that area, it lowers yield. But somehow they own the channels of information that go to farmers. They've got that down. So let's say they introduce Terminator technology and convince the farmers to give up the seeds that have been in their possession for generations. Now we're taking the biodiversity on Earth and narrowing it down to just those seeds in the catalog. From 400 or 500 to 4 to 5 in the US, it'll be from thousands or millions of different types of seeds to just their seeds. They're betting the life of the planet, hoping that their little mini diversity will support us. Now, even the traits themselves ultimately reduce biodiversity. One is herbicide tolerance. You spray it on the field and you kill all of the plant biodiversity except the GM crop. So forget about interplanting. You can go to Argentina and you basically see an outdoor sterile soy factory that goes on for miles. Hardly any insects, hardly any birds, because there's no other plant life except the soybeans. They've sprayed by airplane, killing all the plant biodiversity. The BT, which is the other main, the BT that is in the crops, that also destroys biodiversity. It eliminates, it can help, it tends to destroy some non-target insects. It might cause problems with honeybees. The Bt toxin itself can destroy biodiversity. There's even some genetically engineered bacteria they tried to introduce it. Unfortunately, it was stopped. One was called IIII. It basically, here's an interesting story. There's a bacteria called Pseudomonas syringii. It's a point. It looks like a syringe, and it's sharp. And what it does is it condenses water. And it allows water to condense on strawberries, which allows frost to kill them. So they decided, let's genetically engineer this bacteria and make this syringe blunt so it won't condense the water. And so they created it and they sprayed it on the field. Fortunately, a friend of ours, Andy Kimbrell, was able to stop this, and they incinerated the field because there's a weed, pigweed, that also dies because of the frost. And if they had done this, then the pigweed wouldn't be killed from the frost, and it would be a much horrible disaster for farmers. But later they discovered that this Pseudomonas syringii bacteria is airborne in the West Coast in the atmosphere and is responsible for maybe 50 to 60% of the condensation of water vapor into rain as it comes off the West Coast. So if they had a runaway bacteria that had changed the pointy syringe to a blunt syringe, they could have irreversibly changed the weather in the world. And no way to recall it. Another bacteria that was about to be deployed all over fields in the United States would have resulted in sterile fields. So even the traits that they're genetically engineering have the capacity to incapacitate the biodiversity. Now there's also another aspect, and that is it may be destroying our livestock, and it may be destroying humans. Let's take a look at that. Hundreds or thousands of sheep in India who are grazing on the Bt cotton plants are dying or getting sick. Same with buffalo, also goats. Some farmers say that 25% of their herds died within a week when they were grazing continuously on Bt. One NGO, the Deccan Development Society, tried hard to get the government and a local university and the National Institute of Nutrition to do studies. No one would do it. After a year of pleading, they did it themselves. They took 9 sheep, 3 ate Bolgard 1, 3 ate Bolgard 2, both genetically engineered, 3 ate non-BT. All the 6 sheep that ate the GM died within a month. The 3 that ate the non-BT, this was last year, I met them 3 weeks ago. The sheep were fine. They were healthy. I went to a village near Warangal. That's in Andhra Pradesh. And I met farmers who had for years allowed their buffalo to graze on cotton plants after harvest. But on January 3rd of 2008, they allowed their buffalo to graze on Bt cotton plants. They grazed all day. The next day they were unconscious or sick. Within 2 or 3 days they were all dead. 13 of them. They also lost 26 sheep or goats. We have 12 cows that died mysteriously in Germany after feeding on certain varieties of Bt. We have a couple of dozen farmers in the US that I know about that claim that their pigs or cows became sterile. Sterility. That's an interesting concept. Sterility. Talk about biodiversity and sterility. When you feed genetically engineered soy or corn to mice or rats, you see changes in their testicles, in their sperm cells, in their embryos, in their offspring. A recent study of corn showed reduction in the number of babies and lower birth weights. In mice, changes in the young sperm cells, changes in the DNA expression of the offspring. In rats, the testicles changed color. And for female rats, more than half of their offspring died within 3 weeks. So, I want to share with you the story of Dr. Irina Ermakova, who did this study on rats, finding that there was a huge death rate. And like most of the scientists who have done GMO research and found adverse findings, she was told by her boss, who had been pressured by his boss, not to do any more GMO research. She had discovered a 5-fold increase in the death rate of baby rats fed GM soy that we in America eat all the time. The babies were smaller on average and they could not reproduce. In fact, after doing this study 3 times and got similar results, spontaneously and coincidentally, the entire Russian laboratory switched to a GM soy-based feed, started feeding all of the rats GM soy, and within 2 months, the infant mortality rate jumped to over 55% facility-wide, suggesting that this is a generic problem, and she couldn't do any more research. So a colleague tried to comfort her when she couldn't do any more research and said, well, maybe the GM soy will solve the overpopulation problem on Earth. So maybe GM soy is going to reduce the biodiversity of human beings as part of nature. Certainly the biotechnology companies are reducing the diversity of the intellectual debate by stifling critics, by eliminating those that have found adverse findings, by causing scientists to be fired, stripped of responsibilities, forced out. Even eliminating the diversity of discussion in the newspapers, where reporters are getting threats from Monsanto's attorney, or getting intimidation tactics practiced on them, or being moved over to other stories because Monsanto has so much leverage because of their advertising dollars and connections. So we see a lack of diversity in the field. We see a lack of diversity in nature, in the seeds. We see a lack of diversity in the intellectual capacities and discussions. And we see a potential death blow in the United States. I'll end by saying this. I rarely speak about GMOs without giving a full range of health dangers, because that's what I've been studying. But this is something I'll be doing tomorrow here as part of a presentation to the medical community. So I'll just tell you, we now have a book where I worked with more than 30 scientists to document all the known risks of GMOs. Well, I wrote this as a tool for 2 or 3 different groups. One for policymakers, because the 65 risks offer a biosafety checklist. They can demand evidence from the biotechnology companies. They won't get it, and they can then ban it on that basis. It's overwhelming, irrefutable evidence of harm. It's for medical doctors and scientists, and especially for activists. Because we walk around all the time and people say, there's no proof that GMOs are dangerous. All you have to do is hand them the book and just say, just flip through and just read the left side. It'll just take you a few minutes. If you have counter evidence, I'd be happy to see it. In fact, I'll pass it on to the author who will publish it on his website. They will not respond. You've won the argument. In fact, we've won this argument for years. So this is a handbook that will be available soon here. It's supposed to be today, but maybe tomorrow. And you can order some here. But it just got published in India. And so I've been wanting to get this in. That's really why I'm here, is because I didn't want to come to India and not have a leave behind, not have a tool to give to people and say, here, get this to your policymakers, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey.